Konnichiwa!
Welcome to the Jandals in Japan podcast.
Kia ora, Catherine. So here we are back from Beppu, and this is a special episode we wanted to record just to remember our takeaways, insights, all the great things that we experienced and learnt from taking part in the JNZBC, Japan New Zealand Business Council Conference in Beppu this year, 2022. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you were actually up on the stage. You were one of the few women who were up on the stage during that conference, being a moderator for the very first plenary session.
The first plenary session was actually looking back to watershed moments.
That's right.
That have occurred over the past 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of, even more than that, the relationship between New Zealand and Japan. I mean, the whole theme of the conference was transforming challenges into strengths through partnership, with a focus on sustainability and sustainable societies. And I was so pleased to be able to be asked to be a co-moderator with my friend from Sumitomo Forestry. And we had split it between New Zealand moderator and Japan moderator. So I was New Zealand, and I was dedicated to two New Zealand companies, Zespri and Air New Zealand. And we worked before the conference on what that would look like, what sort of watershed moments they wanted to talk about, and talk about their story of working in and around Japan. And, you know, it was just incredible that they could come up with interesting things. If you think about Air New Zealand, for example, they invested more than 10 years, I think it was 13 on the ground before, to build up relationships, get the trust, get the confidence before they actually got approval to land.
They fly the route that they could land in Narita.
They could actually land in Narita.
It took 13 years for that to come through. That is just amazing. And in that time, they took that time to build brand awareness and trust with the Air New Zealand brand, so that when that did come through, that people were lining up to get on those flights. Which makes sense for it makes sense for what Ian was saying when he first came. Ian was our guest a few episodes ago, and he was saying in the episode that he couldn't fly direct from Auckland to Japan. He had to go via Singapore or Hong Kong maybe. And at that time in the 70s when he first came to Japan. So that would have been when Air New Zealand wasn't able to fly yet.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And speaking of Ian, I mean, he spoke at the end there about none of this being short term. It's all about long term, and that good things take time. And he talked about, remember he quoted that Japanese saying, Ishi no ue ni san nen.
Yeah.
You know, literally sitting on a rock. 3 years on a rock, sitting on a rock. And I'm going to quote what he said. He talked about international engagement as long term, challenging work that requires an intergenerational perspective, a commitment to stakeholder engagement, significant investment, building relationships, market research, and importantly, a cross-cultural understanding and a willingness to see things from the other person's point of view. I really love how he captured that at the end. I quoted him on that when he was saying, I was writing these notes furiously. So that was awesome to hear him sum up in that way. And there's probably a little bit more to say. But for me, when I was listening to the people speaking at the conference, the first message I took away was this continuity and constant action. We've talked about it lots on the podcast. Setting up in Japan takes a long time, but the rewards are huge. And had I had time to do a summary on the stage afterwards, I would have said that it takes time to plant the seed like it does for a tree, right? To grow, to nurture it, fertilize it. All of these things grow a strong tree with very strong roots. And even long-standing Zespri and Air New Zealand, they were great examples of that growth in market. And they also said that they still view Japan as a growth market rather than a established market for them. So they wanted to keep going and think that it's really ripe for opportunities. And the second message, we've talked about it, but calling out collaboration. I don't think Zespri would have been able to succeed in market had they not had their local partners, and they've got local partners now growing the fruit here. So that's one thing.
Super surprising.
Super amazing. And Air New Zealand talked about enhancing its strengths with other New Zealand partners in Japan, right?
Yeah.
Across Team NZ. So those are opportunities to build on strengths that are there. Don't redo or reinvent the wheel. And we've found it across our Jandals too, collaborating together. It really makes sense, not just with Japanese partners, but like country partners.
Yeah, right. Like I think we were showing a picture of Zespri and Air New Zealand collaborating on some marketing thing, and I was like, that's fantastic. That why not collaborate
Why not
more?
do that?
Yeah, share the cost, share the benefits, but also just increase that brand awareness through these collaborations.
Right, that picture captured it, didn't it? So Air New Zealand with a
The
team,
Kiwi Brothers, was it?
Kiwi Brothers. The Kiwi Brothers mascots were there, and then a chap from Tourism New Zealand, and a celebrity, a Japanese celebrity who was in the campaign. It was just amazing. And I think the third message I was going to convey, had I had time, but I did at the end, and a very quick summary, was the complementary skills and competencies and attributes that we have as both countries that we can work on. And I wanted to really talk about soft power. I think Japan and New Zealand are in the top 15, 16 countries in the world. In fact, I think they're closer to the top 5 of countries that rate very high in soft power. And, you know, that's about diplomacy and about cultural and political influence, empathy, trust, integrity, all of those things. Not the military power or the huge economic power of big countries, but the smaller power that we can bring. And I just thought, what about if we could bring all of that together, how New Zealand and Japan could work together on soft power aspects to solve those big issues, climate change, poverty, inequality, carbon neutrality, tech, clean tech, food security. All of those things need hard aspects, but the soft power that Japan and New Zealand have together, I think we could really do a lot more, as we have a natural way of working together.
Definitely. And what else were you going to say when you got cut off? Like, I think because everybody talked too long.
Everyone talked too long. It was the first session as well.
And it was the first session, and nobody sort of knew how it was going to go. And then you didn't get a chance to read your summary. What
the other part I was going to talk about was reflecting on the night before I spoke. We'd been at an event where a welcome party where there was taiko drummers, and the taiko drummers were children who were performing under the New Zealand and Japan flags. And these kids were aged from 11 or 12 through to the leader, who was around 15, 16. And it got me thinking about where they will be in 10 years' time. And so those 11, 12-year-olds are going to be 21, 22, finishing university. The one who's the leader, he will be, and they will be, the ones who are at that end of the scale will be 25, 26, and probably been working in a company or in a business or somewhere for 4 or 5 years. So for me, it was, we leaders now need to be thinking about a sustainable society for those children and designing our now for them in the future. So that's what struck me, and I wanted to convey that message. And I didn't think that we could be a sustainable society without diverse voices. And I alluded to a little bit about this when I, related hearing Jacinda Ardern when she came to Japan. She came to Tokyo and spoke at the Tokyo Chamber of Commerce business event. And she talked about asking and being asked, and herself being asked to be Prime Minister, or else she wouldn't have been there. And I really do think that in future conferences, not only this one, but others, we really need to bring in more diverse voices. And we can only do that by asking them first. They're not readily going to put up their hand, even if they want to. So we've got to actively bring in more voices, women, Indigenous people, young people. There was a group there from tourism based in New Zealand, 4, 5, 6 people came through, but more of those people who not just participate, but actually get to be up on the stage and have the privilege I had of being a moderator or a speaker. We need more of that in the future. And I really hope that we can work together and show the way. And so that's what I wanted to also convey, and be in a place in future, like Jacinda Ardern also said, she wants her daughter to also be in a place where she's not having to be asked, but it just naturally happens. So that's the sustainable future, I think, and brings back in the tying in of all the themes of the conference.
Yeah, I think if we could have seen maybe one of those young people up on the stage to hear what are they worried about, what do they care about, or what's concerning them in their career or business that would have been very interesting as
It
well.
would have been just an opportunity at some point, even 10 minutes, to be able to give them sound bites. To be able to do that would be awesome. But let's bring them back again and give them an opportunity, and maybe we can have them on the show sometime, Jayne, to talk about it. But
yeah, we'd love to hear from them.
Have them go to Christchurch, where the next conference will be held in November 2023, and speak about these success stories. And then have them also come back to Japan, or another group or various groups for the 50th conference in 2024, talking about those success stories and collaboration and community connection, complementary skills. I really want to hear what they've got coming in the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, for me, the New Zealand delegates breakfast was very interesting to hear why people were attending and get a chance to know who is someone that you might like to talk to during the time that we were together. One of the most important things I probably heard was from Nahiwi Tomoana. He was talking about providence, and the importance of providence, the importance of whenua, ancestors, and story. And so that just really spoke to me that this is really important, what we're doing here on Jandals, and that we can help New Zealand businesses in their journey here in Japan as well, telling those stories. And hopefully we can tell some more diverse stories as we go along. That would be really awesome. And being together in person was really important, wasn't it?
Sure was.
That was the first time in 3 years that it had happened to be in person.
That's right.
And I can't imagine how it must have been to be doing it online. It must have been a real struggle to get people. I don't know how they, because some of the best interactions and the funnest sort of moments happened in those moments between all of the meetings. It wasn't in the meeting when you're sitting there or listening, but when you went to get a coffee and you had to help someone get the hot water out, and then it turned into a conversation, or when you were on a bus and there were no seats left and you had to sit next to someone you didn't know, and they turned out to be really fun and you had a great conversation.
That was fun.
Yeah. So it was those other times, when we could meet people, just chat, but you knew that was going to end, so it wasn't a big investment, right? But you could just chat for 10 minutes while you're on that bus. You knew you were going to get off, right? And soon. So you just enjoyed it while you were there. But then it was quite fun, and maybe you had lunch together later or something. But yeah, it was
exactly.
That was really
or that you could connect someone else. But I think one of the last 2 coffee breaks, I actually just spoke to one person on each break. So I wasn't talking to many people or trying to see who else I could speak to. I just devoted the time to one person, and one of them was an avid listener of the podcast, and then shared with me a couple of other ones that they listened to. And that was cool, just to hear about a few other things that people talk about that they're interested in, and just hear their voice from locally being in New Zealand, and how much more they want to be doing with Japan, and how we could work together. And it was very natural, it wasn't forced. And so I think that's what happens only when you're in person, and when you're in a situation like that where you're on your break and investing in that time. So it does, like Ian has often said, it happens on the course, not at the tee, and it happens in between the conference, on the green of the golf course, not at the tee when you're teeing off. You're right. The presentations were fantastic. They were great to hear the updates and information that I hadn't heard before, or new things. But it was really those chats in between and sitting down at lunch.
The stealth networking, I think, is the word I was looking for. You didn't know you were doing it. You thought you were just riding on a bus somewhere, but actually you were having a great time chatting to someone, and you got to know more about whatever it is that they're doing. Yeah.
And it came up a couple of times that with your food basket and my food basket, the people will thrive, that Māori proverb. And I thought, that's what it all was. It was helping each other fill each other's basket. So that we could be better together. And I really loved how we talked about that. And it was just a lot of fun and really well organized. And I know to have a conference like that work as well as it did, there must be so much action going on in the background. And, you've got to call it out for Sarah McLaughlin to also give her such kudos to what she did to bring it all together. And Tony Boot, he also helped there with the tourism team. And just a lot goes on in the background of these conferences. And group study tours, etc., that you just don't know about, you never hear about, and they just do the job. So thank you to them. Anything else you found, Jayne, and your takeaways?
Well, I made it to the newspaper in Beppu, apparently.
So you did.
Luckily, somehow it came through into your inbox, didn't it? In an email.
On a completely different email chain. Yes, I saw it. I scrolled right to the very end and saw this picture and thought, that's Jayne. and zoomed in, and sure enough, it was you. And the Beppu, I think, was it? Or Oita local newspaper.
Yeah, Oita, local newspaper or something like that. And yeah, apparently there was a picture of me. So we went and looked further, and yeah, the media had been there covering it. And I'd been sitting at the front or near the front, and I wanted a good seat so that I could take photos and, video you up on the stage and things like that. And so I had plonked myself down next to a random Japanese man, and I just said, "Hello, can I sit next to you?" And he was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure." And so we sat together and created this image that ended up on the front of well, not on the front page, but in this newspaper, which was a Japanese businessman and a New Zealand woman working away at a desk at this conference together. Hashtag international understanding, hashtag kokusai koryu. I just thought that was pretty funny.
It was great. A great symbolism of the whole thing.
Yes, it was symbolism. Yes.
And you were great in that, and we should all do this. It's not just sit in the same place that we would normally sit or with our comfort people. You sat in a different place to me. We split up, divided and conquered, right? But that's it, to just do things differently. You're coming to an event like this, you really need to get out of your comfort zone and not sit all together.
Yeah, so when we hit the breaks, I said to my table friend, "What was your takeaway?" And then he would tell me the things that were interesting to him or things he didn't know. And so I found that really interesting, that we both found it interesting, but there was different things that we found interesting. And so we shared with each other what those things were or what we thought was good. And yeah, it turns out he works at a very big company. That was one of the big companies at the conference. And yeah, now we have another listener to the Jandals in Japan podcast, because he got told all about it while he got to sit next to me as well. But he was very interested in learning more about New Zealand people and how they think or what they struggle with when they come to Japan to do business with. And so I explained to him he can hear all about that on our show. And yeah, he thought that was a really good resource as well. So yeah, please recommend it to your Japanese friends as well, as a way to learn about New Zealanders who want to do business in Japan.
That's a good aspect, isn't it, to again call out, is that it's helpful for Japanese people to know what foreigners, especially in our case New Zealanders coming in, struggle with, that they can actually do workarounds on, or be conscious.
Just notice it. Yeah, just notice it. They're not idiots. They actually don't know.
They just don't know that there's actually a switch to flick back on the hot water to push the pump and to do all this. Every water jug, etc., is all set up differently, right? Yeah. So just every little thing like that. Of course, on a bigger scale for business coming in, what makes it easier? I'm really glad that you sat with him and could strike up that conversation, and that was going on all the time. I'm up on the stage, or that someone else is presenting, or that I'm on the other table talking. Imagine if we could have captured all of those conversations that were happening amongst people. And I'd really love for others who have had a great time at the conference to let us know. Tell us your story of the thing that was really, really great for you outside of the formal presentations, the formal panel discussions, plenary sessions. What else was really rocking for you during that conference that made a big difference to you coming to Japan after such a long time? And also for the Japanese people who were in Japan, them attending and meeting up with New Zealanders, what made a difference to you? We'd love to hear that.
Yeah, I hope next time we can have some more of these stealth networking opportunities, whatever it might be. I was thinking maybe if everybody picked up a number when they walk into the room. If you're a New Zealander, you pick a number from that box. If you're on the Japan side, you pick a number from that box. So you're going to end up sitting next to someone from the other team.
Now that's a brilliant idea.
Like, you have to. And because you've got a number, it's too bad that you end up sitting where you sit, because I feel that is something that Japanese people could get on board with. And then you have to give your number back at the end of each coffee time. So when it's coffee break, you give your number back, and when you come back in, you have to go and sit somewhere else.
Yeah.
So like you're moving around the room
because you don't have that much stuff with you, so you can just pick it up, right?
Shouldn't be hard. Like,
whatever, you just pick it up when you find out what your number is and move to the next spot. That would be it's like round robin, isn't it?
Sort of like speed dating.
How many
conference style? But I just thought if you did that, then there's 6 different people you could meet.
Exactly.
Probably.
And it may feel a little uncomfortable as who am I going to be with? But we love the challenging of our comfort zones in a way.
It would just be the first time everyone would be a bit nervous, and then they'd be like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And then enjoy it from the second time around. It'll be very fun, I think.
The other thing I would like, you talked about it when we were there, is the cross industry or cross group interactions, and perhaps that could have been a bit more formalized. So maybe even before each session or before the evening sessions, there could have been a little powwow or a bit of a hui together to try and do some cross-cultural, cross-industry quick interactions, that maybe some sharing or deepening there could be something else to work on for next time, just to make rock it up a little bit.
Really fun, different. Just tell us your problem and how would your industry deal with that? Oh, well, we would do that or something for 5 minutes each or something. Who knows?
Yeah, the alternative to going out on the golf trip. So there is the golf trip on the Sunday before the Monday official start, but maybe the people who aren't going to the golf could be generating some kind of discussion back at the hotel. So there would be a time to connect in that way across the industry, and then you're already kickstarting the next day's events as well. Maybe there's something like that, some room to work with that for the forthcoming conferences.
That would be really fun to meet, a space person, a forestry person, a tourism person, and then you all discuss something.
Some particular
be very different perspectives.
That's on their plate, right? Because, for example, CEOs these days are very concerned about retention of staff, retention of employees, good employees. They've all got that issue amongst them.
Oh yeah,
sure.
Totally.
So why not hear from the person in tourism, how they're dealing with it, to help the person in forestry, right? I think that would be an awesome thing to do. Yes. I can't wait for Christchurch next year. I mean, it is my hometown. Woo-hoo! So I'm looking forward to being a host, helping out in the hosting and making sure everyone feels comfortable and introducing my little old city and seeing how things work. And it'll be November before we know it. This year's gone so fast. So looking forward to that. And the preparations, I'm sure, are already starting.
Yeah, I can't wait to have Christchurch as a venue after all these years of being rebuilt. It's ready. Let's go back there and share what a great place Christchurch is, and that people can visit again. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's also, the timing is really super. I don't know how it worked, but it is the anniversary of the sister city relationship between Christchurch and its Japanese counterpart Kurashiki in Okayama Prefecture. So they were established in 1973. It'll be 2023.
Wow.
Yeah,
what a lovely coincidence.
50 years, right? So that's amazing. So we look forward to continuing being involved, and really thank Ian for the support he's given the podcast and all the other people he's introduced. Guests are still piling through Ian's introduction. And if any of you all know about something perhaps in the future that you'd like to have shared on the podcast, let us know. And certainly, as I said before, any feedback from the conference itself, we'd love to share in a future episode. Your feedback, your inspirations from your time in Beppu.
Alrighty, yeah. Thanks to everyone who's been listening, and our new listeners from Beppu who are hopefully listening to this as well when they all subscribed during the conference. And we will be back with more awesome Jandals and their great stories of entry into Japan soon.
Kia ora, and see you soon. Thanks for listening. Make sure you check out our guests' links in the show notes.
This podcast is brought to you today by Catherine O'Connell Law and Pod Launch with Jayne. If you have a great story you think should be on the show, come and find us on LinkedIn or Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.
Mata ne!